The Baltimore Ravens tight end ripped Josh Allen and Bills fans while defending Lamar Jackson. We talk about that. Some of the other MVP narratives that popped up on Sunday that were pretty ugly, and then also the Ravens playoff picture. It is officially coming more and more into focus. All that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, also in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. It's the same show, both audio and video, so you're not missing out any which way you decide to watch or listen. We bring you Ravens news, analysis, updates, and so much more. We go live after every Ravens game. We have bonus episodes for other content. If you want Ravens coverage and if you want it daily, be sure to keep it locked in here on Locked On Ravens. And we have a lot to dive into today. Now, I know the MVP conversation, it's tiring, it's toxic, it's exhausting, but man, it feels like it's all anybody's talking about these days, when in reality, the Ravens have a big Week 18 game against the Cleveland Browns to hopefully secure the AFC North. So we're going to get into everything. We're going to talk about the MVP. We're going to talk about the game against Cleveland. We're going to talk about the Ravens playoff picture. We'll do a little bit because the Ravens tight end and Mr. Charlie Kolar himself went on Twitter and just ripped Josh Allen and Bills fans. It got a little crazy, and I have to talk about that. We have to, because it's the biggest storyline of the day for sure. But then there were other things that went on, and we're not going to spend 10 minutes in that first segment just talking about Bills fans, right? We're not going to do that. We're going to talk about Josh and Lamar and how those guys have played this season, because look, we can be honest, those two guys, incredible players, having incredible seasons. But then there have been other narratives that have been formed about the MVP, whether for Lamar or against Lamar. A lot of it has been against Lamar. Feels like, there's been a lot of other stuff that's been going on. We'll talk about some of the other narratives, especially one that Tony Romo had, and then we'll talk about the playoff picture. And of course, sprinkled in, we will dive into some other things as well. So let's start off here. Charlie Kolar just ripping Josh Allen while defending Lamar Jackson. And Charlie Kolar is somebody that, again, this was just kind of came out of nowhere on Sunday night. I actually had a different plan, or not completely different, but I had somewhat of a different plan for the show. And then this comes up. Charlie Kolar at about 7 o'clock last night says, "I'm not a math genius, but one guy seems to be leading in all categories except quarterback sneaks." And obviously this is in the context of the NFL posting Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson stats through 17 weeks. So Lamar 3,955 passing yards, Josh Allen 3,731. Lamar 852 rushing yards, Josh Allen 531, 43 total touchdowns for Lamar, 41 for Josh Allen, and then Lamar has 4 interceptions and Josh Allen has 6. So there's a lot of conversation about Josh Allen. I've seen the stat padding stuff. I've seen all those narratives for Josh. He had another kind of tush-push touchdown in there, quarterback sneak that happened in this game. He also handed the ball off to James Cook from the 1-yard line as well. But there are a lot of narratives about, look, Lamar being better in every category but rushing touchdowns. And look, Charlie Kolar's going to go to bat for his guy. For example, Spencer Brown, Bills offensive lineman, he went to bat for his guy. And look, Ravens fans go hard for Lamar Jackson. Bills fans go hard for Josh Allen. I love the conversations personally. I mean, I think it's a fun way to kind of hype up your own player. Now that fun goes away when it gets super toxic, and that I think is where we are definitely headed if we're not already there. And I feel like we've been there for a while. Conversation is definitely toxic surrounding it. But as I said it last week, if you're an everydayer, it's great to have a player. It's really fun to have a player like Lamar Jackson on your side who is in conversations potentially if he wins a third MVP and wins a Super Bowl for where does he fall all time? Like, it's really fun and really awesome to have a player that we can even have those conversations about, to have a player on your side, on your team that, you can say, oh, hey, that guy, yeah, I get to watch him play every week and I get to watch him play for the team that I like. Like, that's the really cool part of this whole thing, at least to me. But I think the sad thing about the toxicity of the MVP conversation, in my opinion, or at least what it has become, is that one, as I mentioned, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, two incredible players. I think they're both having great seasons. If Lamar wins it and Josh doesn't, Lamar, he deserves the award. If Josh wins it and Lamar doesn't, there are plenty of reasons why Josh Allen would win it and why he would deserve it as well. I mean, both these guys, I know there have been also conversations about co-MVP, which we will get to in the second part of the show and talk about that a little bit, because that was a take that came up as well. But Lamar and Josh also have a lot of respect for each other. And I think that, to me, is the saddest part of it all. To where you hear every time these two guys play, Josh hyping up Lamar hyping up Josh. Both those guys really appreciate and respect what the other does. And that, to me, kind of, I don't think a lot of people have talked about it while this MVP conversation has gone on. But here's the thing, and we'll get to this a little bit as the show continues. I feel like with the way that these two quarterbacks are playing, both teams have Super Bowl aspirations. And this is the thing where obviously Lamar's been asked about MVP. Josh has been asked about MVP. And they both are kind of the mindset like, oh, I don't really care about that. You know, great award. Lamar's made it clear that he believes it's a team award in terms of he has to have guys block for him, guys catch his passes. And I like and I appreciate that mindset. But the big conversation is Lamar would trade all two, possibly hypothetically three MVPs for a Super Bowl championship. Right? Both these guys have not made it past the AFC championship game, and that's the next step. So we've heard Lamar during his two MVP speeches talk about how disappointed he was, or at least, you know, during the whole MVP ceremony and that whole process. He said, man, you know, it's a great award. He's thankful for it. He's very appreciative of it. But his goal is the Super Bowl. And so I think that's where the MVP conversation, when you talk about Ravens versus Bills, the Ravens, Lamar, Ravens fans, it's kind of like, okay, been there, done that, right? Lamar's won 2 MVPs. My big thing with the MVP is give it to the guy that deserves it. And we have a lot to talk about that in the second part of the show. But, you know, if Josh wins it, that's kind of like, oh, this is Josh's first. Like, that's a big deal. Lamar winning three is also a massively big deal. But then Charlie Kolar, because Bills fans, again, got on Charlie Kolar for this. And kind of a savage move, honestly, by Charlie Kolar, saying he's not a math genius, but one guy seems to be leading all categories except quarterback sneaks. The graphic had nothing to do with quarterback sneaks. Charlie Kolar has clearly like either been on social media, looked at the stats, or just watched the games and has seen Josh Allen do a lot of those quarterback sneaks, 1-yard touchdown runs and whatever it may be. And he took that upon himself to add that in there. The graphic had nothing about that in there. So I thought that was kind of like a savage move from Charlie Kolar to do that. But then when he put this out, about an hour or so later, 45 minutes later, he commented under his own tweet and said, LOL, did not realize how hateful Bills fans are. Josh is obviously really good. I just think LJ is the MVP. So again, there is respect here. Charlie Kolar's not going out there and saying that Josh Allen is a terrible player and that there's no reason he's in the MVP conversation. Of course not. It's a no-brainer that Lamar and Josh Allen are the two finalists here. By the way, Saquon Barkley having a heck of a year. Joe Burrow having a heck of a year. Obviously for Joe, the record and Cincinnati's playoff standing plays a part. And for Saquon, I just think the conversation around MVP is it's more of a quarterback award than anything right now. Not that that's fair. I do think that we should bring more positions into it, but it feels like Offensive Player of the Year is more so the non-quarterback award, and MVP is the quarterback award, and that's just the way it has been, and I don't know how long it's going to be that way. But when you look at the stats, you look at strength of schedule, you look at a lot of these things, Lamar Jackson does come out ahead in those categories. There are things that Josh Allen has done this season, right? But it just feels like with everything, there are, whether it's certain narratives being pushed, certain things being put out to the public by big accounts or big media companies, even in favor of one player. I think that it feels like, even though I do believe Lamar's done enough to wrap up the award, it feels like everybody's pushing for it to be Josh Allen, which is confusing because, again, I just feel like we should, one, appreciate the greatness, which I do. I think Josh is really fun to watch play. He does flop sometimes a little too much, but I think he's a really fun player to watch. Lamar obviously is a super fun player to watch. We got to appreciate this greatness, but in doing that, you have to give the award to the guy that deserves it. Whether at the end of these 17 games, it is Lamar Jackson or it is Josh Allen. The Bills are locked into the 2 seed, and we'll get to that in the final part of the show with playoff scenarios. I'm not sure Josh Allen plays. I think he has a start streak that maybe he plays like one snap to keep the start streak alive or something, but I don't think Josh really plays a ton in this game Buffalo has coming up against the Patriots. So Lamar will have the division on the line, right? He's playing for the division. If the Ravens lose, there's a chance Pittsburgh can leapfrog Baltimore back into that spot. So obviously Lamar's going to have something to play for. Josh doesn't have anything to play for. So we'll talk about all of that and more coming up in the second part of the show because we got an MVP narrative from Tony Romo that he brought up. I mentioned the co-MVPs. That was brought up as well. These narratives are getting a little crazy. So be sure to stay tuned. A lot to get to here on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Rocket Money. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore. I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. We're back. Our second segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on the show. A nice stress-free Sunday for the Ravens. Obviously, they played on Wednesday on Christmas, and so we go live after every Ravens game. Usually that happens on Sundays, but Ravens haven't played on Sunday in a while, and that's not going to change anytime soon, as I guess some breaking news at the time I'm recording this is the Ravens and Browns will be facing off Week 18 Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. The Steelers and Bengals will play after that. So just wanted to put that out there, but we are going to talk about that a little more in the final part of the show because there are some nuances in that get a little weird for both Baltimore and Pittsburgh and kind of how the division race finishes up. So we'll get into that as well. But I appreciate everybody for being here. Again, we're a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast. We do shows daily. Monday through Friday is our regularly scheduled content. We put that out at 6 a.m. Eastern every single weekday. And then we have bonus episodes with other content. We go live after every game, after every piece of big news. And of course, we are here for you, whether you watch in video form or listen in audio form. So hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, video form, audio form, however you prefer to watch or listen. Now, talked about Charlie Kohler and him roasting Josh Allen and the Bills, and did pay respect to Josh Allen in the tweet below, but he roasted Bills fans, called them hateful. I did not expect anything along those lines, but hey, you know what? Charlie Kohler was just riding for his guy, much like the Bills ride for their guy. So, hey, I respect Charlie Kohler 100,000,000,000% for doing that. But here's the next part of this exhausting, this toxic MVP conversation. Again, I get it. I know it seems like it's the only thing everybody's talking about, as I mentioned, but we do have to talk about it, especially when there is a take like Tony Romo had during the Bills and Jets game, because this just was unbelievable. Tony Romo was talking about the MVP conversation because guess what? It's a pretty big conversation for those that don't know. And he said, in his opinion, that you're going to side with the guy that doesn't have an MVP award. That's just the human nature, in my opinion. The full quote on it was, I think they're tied in my brain. I think that Josh Allen might get the edge only because Lamar's had two. If Josh had two, you're going to side with the guy who doesn't have one. That's just human nature, in my opinion. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. And here's the thing. let's start here. If I'm Josh Allen, I hate this. I hate this if I'm Josh Allen. Give me the award because I deserve it. Don't give it to me because, oh, this guy has to. Oh, we feel so bad for you. Here you go. Here's the MVP. I wouldn't want to win it that way. Like, again, Josh has done a lot to be deserving of the award, as has Lamar. If I'm Josh, I don't want it to come down to being, yeah, well, Lamar already has two. We feel kind of bad for you, Josh. So we're just going to go and we're going to give you this award to make you feel better. That doesn't make me feel better that makes me feel worse if I'm Josh Allen. That doesn't make me feel good at all. And this goes back to the conversation about voter fatigue. It goes back to the conversation about the different narratives that are being brought up to maybe push or nudge one candidate in front of the other, this being Josh Allen instead of Lamar Jackson. That's why when the MVP race was called, quote unquote, called by all the media analysts nationally like 3 weeks ago, that I came on here and I said, look, this is ridiculous. Lamar still has 2 big games left. And if Lamar has stinkers in those games, okay, like sure, you can call it for Josh Allen, but let's get there first. And then Lamar, obviously, after the bye week has been incredible. Baltimore has been incredible. Josh Allen and the Bills were able to beat up on the Jets yesterday. That was a big win for them. So it's like, again, there are ever so changing things throughout the course of even a month. And people were saying, yeah, all right, Lamar's done. It's Josh Allen's award. This is going to come down. I would not be shocked if it was 1 or 2 votes that decided this thing between the 2 players. They've both been that good. They both have reasons to win. I don't want to make it sound like I'm discrediting Josh. I know that some people might feel that I am, and I'm saying, oh, Lamar's just worlds better than Josh Allen, and Lamar, all this. I do believe Lamar has been the best quarterback in the league this season. I do. I believe Lamar has been the best player in the league in 2024. You look at everything. But the arguments that are coming up, again, is stuff we've talked about. The Bills not having expectations this season. They lose to Stephon Diggs, and, they're expected to take a rebuild year, and then the Bills are doing what they're doing, being the 2 seed. That's impressive, but it doesn't carry as much weight for me because that entire conversation would have meant more if the Ravens were if the Ravens are the 5 seed, that changes things, right? The 5 seed versus the 3 seed is different for me for Baltimore. But now that the Ravens are in the driver's seat for the AFC North, not official, but now that they're in the driver's seat for it, 2 seed versus 3 seed is not moving me enough to ignore the stats or ignore the records or ignore all this. Same thing with the win-loss stuff. I don't think 2 losses is moving me enough to ignore the stats compared to the Bills having 2 less losses than Baltimore. With Joe Burrow and where he is, that's a real conversation. Because again, I'm a Nuggets fan, all right? I've been through this before. This is literally a carbon copy of Nikola Jokic versus Joel Embiid a couple years ago. Jokic had won 2 MVP awards. He was on track to win a 3rd, was having his best season ever, right? All these stats, all these records, but Embiid hadn't won an award before. And he was also having a great season, ton of points. I think true shooting percentage was up there. And the voters got tired of voting for Jokic. They didn't want to hand him. It would have been his 3rd straight MVP award at this point. So I guess it's a little different because Lamar's was 2019, 2023. But voters got tired of voting for Jokic and wanted something different. And there are all these narratives being pushed. And then so Embiid got the award, but then Jokic won the championship. So if anything, that's what I'm hoping happens. Like, again, take the award, Josh Allen. If it means Lamar went to a Super Bowl, I'm fine with that. I think that even in Jokic's mind and, even circles, it feels like the MVP does come with a lot of added pressure just in terms of stuff. And the MVP award is different. NBA, NFL, every league in terms of when the award is presented and everything that comes along with it. But it just feels like this is a carbon copy of that, where I lived through that. There was extremely toxic conversation between Nuggets fans and Sixers fans. It's the same thing this year with Ravens fans and Bills fans. It's unfortunate, but it's happening. You watch greatness every night for both guys, but you can't, I do appreciate it for both guys, but I know for some people it might be harder because, you want to so badly have your guy win. And look, I want Lamar to win this thing if he deserves it, and I think he does. This is Lamar's award to me. But it just feels like what the narratives are CBS talking about Josh Allen arm punt, or, you have a bunch of other different companies putting out stuff about Josh. CBS even put out like a mini trailer about Josh Allen's life. Like we are seeing those narratives being pushed the same way we are seeing the narratives about Embiid, or we saw the narratives about Embiid be pushed over Jokic. And that's why, to me, I would not be shocked if Josh Allen won the award. And that's just what it might have to be. But again, Lamar would sacrifice those MVPs for a Super Bowl. I've heard the co-MVP talks. Bill Cowher talked about that. And it's happened before. It's not unprecedented. This has been a thing. It's happened. I think that's fine. I personally just feel like one guy should win it. Like, it should be one guy's award. But Lamar and Josh are having great seasons. So we'll see what comes of it. But it just feels like the participation MVP narrative, that's an ugly narrative for everybody. For Lamar, for Josh, for the Ravens, for the Bills, for everybody involved. That's an ugly narrative. The award should not be given out to somebody because, it's a pity MVP award, right? That's what happened with Embiid. It was a pity MVP award, and it meant a lot to him. Embiid wanted to win an MVP forever. He won it. That's great. And, Josh would be very appreciative of it, I'm sure. And obviously we know Lamar is. But don't give the award to a guy because he doesn't have one. Give the award to the guy because he's earned it. And whether that's Lamar or Josh Allen, man, it's going to come down to the absolute wire. But coming up in the final part of the show, we will talk about the Ravens playoff picture. It comes even more into focus after the Week 17 game. So we should have stayed tuned. A lot to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround, or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with DK Law Group. DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. DK Law Group is a woman-led firm with Diana Khan at the helm. Diana has been called an unparalleled legal expert by some. One of the things I'll quickly notice with DK Law Group is their transparent pricing. They believe in clarity and cost and no one left in limbo. DK Law Group knows that speed is key. By leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. Contact DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. Locked On listeners and call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. We return our final segment, Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher here with you on this Monday. Now looking ahead to Week 18 with the Cleveland Browns. Again, that game on Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Been a while since the Ravens have actually played on a Sunday. So continuing with that scheduling, in a few minutes, we'll get to kind of the weird quirks and nuances that schedule decision by the NFL actually has on the Ravens, because there are a couple of them that we have to talk about. We talked a lot about the MVP conversation. Again, I know it's tiring, but it's a huge conversation, and we have to talk about it because it's the biggest headlines. And we talk about the biggest headlines here on Locked On Ravens. So if you have a friend or a family member who likes 5-day-a-week Ravens coverage, or who wants Ravens coverage in general, we have them covered 5 days a week plus more, just like we have you covered 5 days a week plus more. So hit that like and subscribe button, video form or audio form. Now, we talked about the Ravens playoff picture coming a little more into focus during yesterday's bonus episode. If you missed that, be sure to check it out. We talked about John Harbaugh having some words for the Zach Orr haters and some more along those lines. But now it is even more in focus because one of the scenarios we talked about yesterday is off the books. It's off the table. The Ravens can no longer be the 2 seed like we talked about earlier in the show. The Bills wrapped that up with their win over the New York Jets. So now there are only 3 teams the Ravens can play in the first round of the playoffs. Only 3. The Chargers, the Steelers, or the Texans. That's it. Then we can talk about some other scenarios. If the Ravens win whatever game that is, who would they face in the second round? There are a bunch of conversations there. But I know that different people have different preferences. And I saw a lot of comments on the show yesterday about preferences. And again, if you want to comment your preference down below, whether you'd want to play the Chargers, Steelers, or Texans, or maybe on social media, if you're an audio form listener, you can hit me up over there as well, or video form, you can hit me up over there. We can talk about it. I think, to me, the team I would want to see the most if I'm the Ravens, I don't want to go see Houston, but here's the problem. That means the Ravens lose a division, and I'd rather have a home playoff game if I'm the Ravens. So My ideal choice with everything factored in is probably the Chargers. And that seems to be Baltimore's most likely playoff scenario anyway, is the Ravens and Chargers matching up in round one. Now, why is that? It's because the Steelers have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Chargers. So just like we talked about yesterday, the scenarios for the Ravens playing the Chargers versus, well, actually, okay, here's the Texans scenario. Is the Ravens have to lose their game against Cleveland. Pittsburgh has to win their game against the Bengals. That would put the Ravens in the 5 spot. That would automatically be Ravens-Texans, which, again, we literally saw a couple days ago how that would go. And I think it would probably go the same way again because Houston is a team that just looks lost. And I don't really feel like they have enough talent, especially with the injuries they've had. And it seems like CJ Stroud has regressed. So I'd be fine with the Ravens playing Houston if it came down to it. But of course, the goal is to win and win the AFC North. Now, if the Ravens beat the Browns, they get the 3 seed, they win the North. Here are the other scenarios for Steelers and Chargers. If the Steelers win and the Chargers win, the Ravens would play the Chargers. If the Steelers win and the Chargers lose, the Ravens will still play the Chargers. If the Steelers lose and the Chargers lose, still the Ravens play the Chargers. The only scenario where the Ravens will play the Steelers in the 3-6 game is if the Steelers lose and the Chargers win. The reason for that is because both teams are tied record-wise, but the Steelers, as I mentioned, have that head-to-head tiebreaker. So if the Steelers and Chargers finish with the same record, it doesn't matter. Steelers get the 5 seed, they play Houston. Chargers get the 6 seed, they play Ravens. But if the Chargers have one more win than Pittsburgh, obviously that flip-flops them, and you'd have Pittsburgh coming back to Baltimore to play for a third time between the two teams. And we know how dicey sometimes that division games can get, especially Steelers-Ravens games. Those are really dicey games. Now, Pittsburgh is falling apart. Russell Wilson has really taken a step back. Seems like there are drama issues, whether it be Patrick Queen, Cam Hayward, George Pickens. Like it feels like Pittsburgh, the vibes there are not good. Vibes around the Ravens are great. And that doesn't always mean that you win or lose in the playoffs. Like when we saw, for example, 2012, the Ravens, they won the Super Bowl. And they ended that regular season 1-3. They fired Cam Cameron, their offensive coordinator, right at the beginning of December, I believe it was, very late in the year. They moved some people around offensive line-wise and personnel-wise. It was a mess, and they still won the Super Bowl. So it's not the be-all, end-all for a team. But I do think that Baltimore, the thing that matches up badly with Baltimore, at least usually, is we've seen the Ravens get manhandled up front by more physical defensive lines. I think Pittsburgh has that. Kansas City has that to an extent. I don't think the Chargers have it. I think Buffalo's a great matchup for the Ravens on their side, because I don't think Buffalo has the guys defensively to stop the Ravens offense, much like we saw back in week 4. I think that the Steelers and the Chiefs are the two teams that have the most realistic shot of beating the Ravens because of that physicality up front. But obviously, I just think it all comes down to Ravens-Chiefs in the AFC Championship game. Ravens get the 3 seed, Bills get the 2 seed. Those teams are, in my opinion, on a collision course for a divisional round matchup. I think both those teams win their wild card games. So you'd go Ravens and Chargers/Steelers, and then you'd go Ravens-Bills. And then assuming the Chiefs win their game, it would be Ravens and Chiefs at Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game. And I mean, what a storyline that would be, to have your heart ripped out last year by Kansas City in your home stadium. You go to their home stadium and you rip their heart out. Plus, we know the narrative, every 12 years, the Ravens win the Super Bowl. So you had 2000, 2001, 2012, 2013. Now we're 2024, 2025. This is it. This is that 12-year stretch. So superstition like that is fun. I'm definitely a superstitious person myself. And hopefully this team can go on a run here. And again, they want to beat the best. To be the best, they got to beat the best. They want the best competition they can to get to their goal. And the path that they're supposed to go on here, it's going to be a tough one, but I do think they're better equipped to face it this year than last year because they faced more adversity this time around. But that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in to the show again. On the way out, hit that like and subscribe button and follow along in audio form. It's the same show again, both audio and video. So we'll have you covered with 5 days a week of daily Ravens coverage. Coming up tomorrow, you guessed it, we'll have more daily Ravens coverage for you. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.